If you're building any kind of an app today, you need a storage backend. You need a reliable place where you can store your data, where you can retrieve your data. And you also need an ability to retrieve specific data for a specific page, for a specific user, and for a specific situation that your app requires. Now, while there are tons and tons of options that can be used as a backend for your app, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you 3 main ways that I feel are the best right now to be used as a backend for your app. And these are Firebase, Supabase, and Xano. First, I'm going to be showing you how you can integrate each of these backends with your no-code tool, such as FlutterFlow. Then I'm going to be telling you the pros and cons of each tool that you should be keeping in mind. And at the end of the video, I'm going to be giving you my personal advice as to which tool you should be using for most of the situation. The first thing I want to show you is a simple app I created that demonstrates how you can connect your app to each one of these backends. And I'm also going to be showing you a difficulty level of connecting to each of these backends that you should be keeping in mind. So here we are in FlutterFlow, and I built a simple app that's able to connect to each one of these backends and get very, very similar data. So let me run this app first just to show you how it works. And then we're going to jump back into FlutterFlow, and I'm going to quickly show you how you can configure an app tool like FlutterFlow to connect to each one of these backends. So we're going to go ahead and start a test environment. All right, so here's the simple app. It only has 3 pages. And this is the Firebase page. And as you can see, we're displaying a bunch of data. Namely, we're displaying a name and a number field that's being displayed as a price field. If we come to the second page, we are loading and displaying Supabase data. Same thing. We have just some random names and a bunch of numbers we are displaying as prices. And last but not least, we have our Xano, which is the same thing. We have the names and we have a bunch of numbers here. Now, let's go back into FlutterFlow, and I want to quickly show you how you can configure your app to use any one or all of these data sources. So here we are back in FlutterFlow, and as you saw, I have 3 pages here. I have Firebase, Supabase, and Xano here, and they are all displaying the same data. First, let me show you how to configure Firebase to a tool like FlutterFlow. The first thing you have to do is you have to go onto the Firebase console here. Next, you're going to go into Firestore database. You're going to create a collection, in this case, customers, and then you're going to add a bunch of documents. And with each document having the fields that you need. Here I have a bunch of documents, and each document has 2 fields. Once you are done here, you're going to go back into FlutterFlow. You're going to come into settings. You're going to scroll down and you're going to go into Firebase and you're going to enter your project ID and you're going to say connect, and then you're going to generate config files. Next, you're going to go into Firestore setting here and you're going to create the schemas that you want to pull and display and have access to from your FlutterFlow app. In this case, I created just one schema. You can just click on this, create a new collection here. In this case, I just have a collection of customers. You can just click this plus icon here, type in the collection that you want to connect to your Firestore Firebase backend, and then enter the fields that you want to display inside of your app. In this case, I have a name, which is a string, price is an integer. Once you do that, you can go back to your app, go into the UI, click on the list view or any other field where you want to display the data and configure it. So I have a backend query here. You can click on query collection. So I can simply click on customers, list of documents. And then inside where I want to display the variables here, I can just click on this, set from variable, and I can just display the specific field that I configured in my schema setting here. So I have the string field, string widget here that's displaying this name property, name field, and then I have this price that's displaying inside of this field. That's all you have to do. Once you do that, your fields are going to get displayed. Next, let me show you how you can configure Supabase. So you're first going to go into supabase.com, you're going to go to your home screen and you're going to create a new project. Here I have project 1 here. Once you've created your project, you're going to go to a table editor and you're going to click on new table. You're going to give it a name, maybe a description and a bunch of fields. I already created a new table called customers that contains a unique ID, name, and a price. Once you've done this, you're going to go into project settings. You're going to go into API where you're going to see all your API keys that you need to copy and paste to a tool such as FlutterFlow. You're going to go back into FlutterFlow, come in here, and you're going to scroll down to Supabase section. You're going to turn this on and you're going to copy this API URL here. You're going to click here. You're going to paste it here, and then you're going to copy your anon key here. You're going to copy this and paste it here. Next, you're going to click on Get Schema, which is going to pull all the schemas, all your tables that you've configured inside of Supabase. And once you do that, it's going to be displayed here. And now you can use it inside of your UI. So if we come back to this page, Supabase, we're going to go into list view. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to add it the backend query, and you're going to choose Supabase query. Once you do that, you're going to pick the table that you want to display. And that's pretty much the same thing as Firebase. And you can click on the individual fields. You have Supabase row field. I have here a name, and right here I have a price. So this step is very, very similar as you did before with Firebase. Now let's jump over to Xano here. We're going to go to xano.com. We're going to sign up for our free account, and you're going to create a workspace. Inside your workspace, you're going to have your databases, your tables, your APIs. But first, you're going to go to this database section here. You're going to create a new table by clicking here. I already created a new table here, and you're going to add the appropriate columns, which are essentially fields. So I have here an ID, which is built in. I have a name and price. Then I have a bunch of random data here. Next, you're going to go to this API section. You're going to click here. And once you create a table, that's going to generate APIs automatically. So here I have an API for displaying this data. You can also edit it if you want. Here I have an API for displaying all the customers. And what you want to do is you want to copy this endpoint link. You want to go back to your FlutterFlow app and you want to configure this API call here by clicking add an API call, giving it a name. I just call it get all customers. Selecting the method type, which is going to be get in this case here, and then you're going to paste your API URL. You can also do a response and test, so we can test this API. And as you can see, we have a list of our objects, right? So we have a list of our people here, essentially. We have this one person, this another person, we have an ID, name, and price. And once you have a successful API call, as you can see, it's 200 success, you can start using it inside of your apps. To do that, you can simply go to a place where you want to load this data. We have a list view here. You're going to go to this backend query tab, and you're going to create a new backend query. I have here an API call. We're going to select get all customers, which is the only call we have. Next, you're going to click here, generate dynamic children. We're going to click here. We're going to select our get all customers response. You're going to leave this as defaults, and you're going to put this to no further changes, hit confirm. And now when you want to display the individual field, you can just set from variable, and you're going to pick JSON path, and you're going to type the name of the variable in this format. So something like a $, period, and then whether it's going to be name or price or something else. And that's going to ensure the correct data is going to be displayed. Now that I showed you a proof of concept app, as well as I explained how to integrate each one of these backend services with your no-code tool of choice, let's talk about the pros and cons of each of these backends so that you have a better idea which one to pick in what kind of situation. The first backend I want to talk about is Firebase. Let's start with the pros first. The first pro is that it gives you a lot of things right out of the box. So you have authentication, you have a database, you have functions, you have extensions, you also have storage, you have machine learning, you have remote config, you have app check. And a lot of these services, they make your lives a lot easier because these are not things you need to go out and code yourself. So if you're building an app, you want to be building the main logic of your app. You want to be focusing on that. You don't want to be, building authentication back, and you don't want to think about functions, extensions, machine learning, storage. You want all of this to be provided to you so that you can just focus on your main app. And this is the best selling point of Firebase. It gives you a ton of these things and you can use them immediately. Another big benefit of using Firebase is that you have rich support inside of FlutterFlow. So if you're going to be using a tool such as FlutterFlow, and I believe FlutterFlow is one of the best no-code tools available right now, then Firebase is a natural choice, because if you simply head over here and you go into Firebase, you can just configure your project. You also have things such as remote config, Crashlytics, app check, and they're probably going to be adding more functionality as time goes on, because a lot of people are using Firebase as a backend for their no-code apps. Plus, since Firebase is owned by Google, you can be pretty sure it's not going to disappear tomorrow. It's not going to go away. People are not going to stop working on it. Chances are you're going to see just the opposite. You're going to be seeing new features, new functionality, new things being developed. So these are the main pros of using Firebase in my book. Now let's talk about the cons of Firebase. The first con of Firebase is this is a proprietary system. If you're building an app on Firebase, you're essentially locking yourself in with a specific vendor. You're using the features and functionality that are only going to be available on Firebase. So for instance, if you have an app, it becomes successful, it goes viral, lots and lots of people start using it, you're pretty much locked in, and you'll have to pay more to Google as your app grows. It's going to be very difficult to kind of take all this data and to migrate it to another system. The other main disadvantage of using Firebase is the options that you have when it comes to storing data, chiefly Firestore database. Chances are, if you're going to be building your app on Firebase, you're going to be using Firestore database. And Firestore database is a NoSQL, no relational database. And so what you end up doing is you need to create collections, and then inside collections, you have documents. And then inside of each document, you can create another collection, and on and on and on. And so you're going to have plenty of situations where you're going to be confused as to how to model that data to better conform to your app, to better display that data to your users. I know for me personally, as someone who came from a more relational database background, understanding and kind of wrapping my head around these sub-collections and collections and fields and documents and all that took some time, and I'm still not there fully. There's still situations where I don't know exactly how to model that data. Or I do know how to model that data, but I'm not 100% sure this is the best way. And I'm certain I'm not the only one, judging by the tons of feedback many of you are expressing as well. Next, let's talk about the pros and cons of using Supabase as your backend. The main pro of Supabase is that it's an open source project. The whole project is available on GitHub. You can simply go over there, you can clone it, you can create your own copy, you can look at all the source code. There's tons of transparency around this whole project, and that's going to make you feel more at ease with using it as a backend for your apps. The other main pro of Supabase is that even though it's a relatively young project, it offers you a ton of different services. So we have a database, we have API, we have auth, we have storage, we have almost everything that Firebase offers right out of the box. The next big benefit of using Supabase is that it gives you relational database support. Now, Postgres has been around for ages. I used Postgres back in the day when I designed websites and did all kinds of things using PHP. So I trust Postgres. It's an amazing database engine. And I also like the fact that I can create tables, I can create relationships between table, and maybe that is because I come from a relational database background. And so for me, relational databases are just more intuitive than NoSQL that Firebase supports. And so just looking at these tables, seeing this familiar terminology, columns and rows and filters and views and things like that, it makes me feel more comfortable knowing that I can go out and create the exact schema for my app and not worry about duplicate data or creating in some ways that's going to be a headache down the road. This relational database aspect just feels more comfortable for me personally. Now, one disadvantage for Supabase when it comes to building your apps with FlutterFlow is that you don't have a ton of support as compared to Firebase. So if you come down to Supabase here, the only thing you really have is access to a database. Now, this can obviously change in the next couple of weeks or months if FlutterFlow decides to add more support. But right now, you're very, very limited in terms of the support you have if you're using a tool such as FlutterFlow. Next, let's talk about the pros and cons of Xano. Now, Xano is different than both Firebase and Supabase, and that is because Xano is a beefier offering. It gives you a beefier way to store your data. You can create tables, you can create APIs, you can also create some tasks, background tasks. You have a library of functions, add-ons, you also have a marketplace, and you have various connectors that allow you to easily connect your data to other third-party services. And that right there is one of the first benefits of using a tool such as Xano, is that you're not really concerned with whether, your no-code tool of choice supports it natively or not. You can simply do what you need to do here and then expose your data as an API, which guarantees that you'll be able to access the data from pretty much any tool out there today. Another nice thing about Xano is that you also have that relational aspect in there, right? So when you're creating your table, you can specify that this is a special foreign key that maps to a primary key in another table. You can show all of these relationships. And that is kind of what I talked about when I talked about Supabase. I like that relational aspect personally. For me, it just makes things a lot more intuitive. I also like the fact that Xano is super customizable. So if I have a table here, it's automatically going to create my APIs, but I can also edit this endpoint. I can edit the inputs, I can edit the function, I can edit the response. And so I can create any kind of API that I want from these little Lego pieces, these different functions that I can kind of mix and match and, get the data that I want or post the data to I want to another application. Makes it very, very easy to just focus on my backend, just to focus on my data, which is really cool. Obviously, one main disadvantage of using Xano with your FlutterFlow apps is that FlutterFlow does not support Xano natively. You have to resort to using API calls. And while FlutterFlow support for creating API calls and getting data or posting data is second to none, at the end of the day, it's a lot easier of using something like Firebase because it's supported natively, or using like Supabase, which is at least supported when it comes to their data storage capabilities. It's not very difficult to create the API calls, but I do prefer the ease of use with using something like Firebase inside of FlutterFlow. Next, I feel that Xano is going to be an overkill if you are looking to store just a little bit of data here and there. If you're looking to store maybe a couple of collections or a couple of tables inside of your app, you're not looking for any kind of crazy complex data management. You're not looking to have an API. You're not looking to connect with third-party service. You just have a very, very simple app that needs to display some data here and there. Then perhaps a tool such as Xano is going to be an overkill for your specific use case. And so there you have it. We had a quick overview and looked at the pros and cons of the three main options for a backend for your no-code app that we have today. Now, let me share with you some final thoughts as to which one of these backend solutions you should be using inside of your app. If you are looking to build a very, very simple app, you're using FlutterFlow, and you just want to build a quick app with some data here and there, you just want to test it out. Maybe it's going to be a proof of concept. Maybe you're doing like a lean startup where you need something to show to people, some idea just to prove that your concept works. And I would just recommend to go with Firebase. Now, you can also go with Supabase if you prefer the fact that it's open source and the fact that you're using relationships between tables. If you prefer a relationship aspect over a NoSQL kind of aspect, then I would recommend going with Supabase. On the other hand, if you're building an app that's going to be very, very data centric, you're going to have a ton of data. And not only that, you're going to have various things that your data is going to be integrating with. Maybe you're going to be integrating with other APIs. Maybe you're going to have integration with tools such as Airtable, maybe Google Sheets, or some other tools such as Zapier, Integromat, and other these API endpoints. And you also have a need for background services that might be running at some time in the future at a set interval. Then definitely have a look at Xano. Xano is a very, very beefy offering that is very, very data centric. And it's going to be the perfect solution if you're looking to store a ton of data and do a lot of things with this data. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video and you are looking to up your no-code game, you are looking to build an app of your dreams, or maybe finally build that one app you've been putting off for a long, long time, and you are looking to get serious with no code, you are looking to maybe build a ton of apps, or maybe you want to do consulting, or maybe you want to have a little bit of side income building no code apps. The fact of the matter is that there has never been a better time to get into no code than right now. There are a ton of awesome no code tools such as FlutterFlow. There are a ton of integration tools out there that are going to make your life a lot easier. And trust me, I say this from experience, because back in the day when I started, none of these tools were available and we had to actually go out and learn code. And that is something I'd probably not do right now. And so if what I'm talking about resonates with you in one way or another, you definitely want to check out my Patreon page. If you love my videos, you're going to absolutely love my Patreon page, because on my Patreon page, you're not only going to get access to all the apps that I built with FlutterFlow, you'll be able to view and or clone pretty much all the apps, including some of the other apps that I built with other no-code app builders, but you're also going to get access to extra content such as live streams, Q&As, behind the scenes content, and my exclusive masterclass series of content. And that is where we do deep dives on specific areas, specific topics that a lot of people are having trouble with the aim of helping them to better understand this specific topic area. Plus, by joining my Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work, which is greatly appreciated. So if you've been loving this video so far and you have not yet joined, I strongly encourage you to check out my Patreon page and become a member. Now, if you want to learn more about the topics that I covered in today's video, check out this video next.